Hi everyone. Today I'm talking about INFJ obsessive self-consciousness. INFJ obsessive self-consciousness shows up in many different areas of life. I almost want to say every different area of life for us. However, today I'm really focusing on the area of creativity and how obsessive self-consciousness shows up for us in our creative lives and why that really holds us back from trying to create, putting ourselves out there, experimenting with new ideas in our creative life. The last video I did in this series, I talked about how we tend to suppress our creativity because of fear. Being in the creative process and working with creative projects can bring up so many issues of trust and vulnerability, fear of making mistakes, fear of failure, or how am I ever going to make money at this? Those thoughts come up too. And I covered all of that and how because that very deep fear is triggered, we will tend to back off our creativity and we will suppress it or we'll block it. And we'll do this subconsciously. Also, what happens is because so many INFJs and INFPs, sad to say, grew up in homes where our creative efforts were not encouraged. Let's put it that way. So we might have been downright bullied or criticized for our creative efforts, or we might have just been sort of neglected or dismissed. Our parents didn't really see us. They didn't really give us the encouragement we needed in our creative efforts for us to keep going. And so early on, we got the idea of it's not really safe to be creative. And I've heard this all across the spectrum from different INFJs and INFPs. Some INFJs will say, well, art and creativity weren't really valued in my household because they don't make money, because they don't seem logical. Other people have said, I was downright shamed for it. I was told that I wasn't a good artist, or that was a bad idea, or I shouldn't try to be creative, it was a waste of time. Obviously, the parents were very threatened in some way by the child being creative, whether that was because they didn't want them to pursue a creative career, or they had had their own creative dreams that didn't come true, and they didn't want their children to show them up. I really see this with INFJs and INFPs who had narcissistic parents. There's this sense of rivalry and competition that comes in. You can't be better than mom. You can't be better than dad. So the INFJ or INFP very early on will tend to shut down those creative efforts because we've already made the association that we need to live in fear of what others think. If we make something creative or we make a drawing or we start writing a story, we are opening ourselves up not only to be vulnerable, but we're actually inviting attack from other people. We're inviting shaming. We're inviting people to say, why did you do that? Or that's not good, or you shouldn't be doing that. So we make that association, we have that link form in our minds really early on. And we understand that if we want to keep the approval of our family, if we want to keep the approval of mom or dad, whoever our primary caretaker was at that time, then we need to go into people pleasing. And that's something that comes very naturally to INF personality types, people pleasing, because we are focused on harmony, especially the INFJs, and we can really anticipate what other people need. We can really pick up on other people's emotions easily. We understand other people's needs very easily. We like meeting other people's needs, honestly. It's something that does bring us joy when we're not doing it in a toxic, codependent way. So it's something that comes naturally to us. And then that people-pleasing pattern comes out when we are also trying to protect ourselves. It sort of becomes a survival skill. So I tried to be creative in my household when I was young. I tried to put out some feelers in writing or art or painting, and immediately I got a bad reaction from my family. I got a bad reaction, or from a teacher, right? A creative wound could come from a teacher as well. But some sort of authority figure told me, authority figure to me, however old you were, some sort of authority figure told me I shouldn't be doing that. I was bad at that. I needed to stop doing that. And so I felt like I invited that attack. I felt like I opened myself up with my creative effort and trying to share it, and then I invited attack. And so as a defense, I went into people pleasing, right? So I agreed, oh yeah, you're right. I don't know what I was thinking, or yeah, I really should never do that again, or I was just joking around. I was just messing around. I wasn't seriously trying to create something or draw something or write something. It was just a bit of foolishness on my part, which I've now forgotten, right? And so it sort of gets swept under the rug. But for the INF person, it doesn't truly get swept under the rug. Or it does get swept under the rug, but it sort of stays under the rug and it festers there in our psyche because it was something that meant so much to us, and it was sort of our fledgling attempt to be creative and share that with the world. And then we got shut down really easily. Now, when you've had this type of experience when you're young, what happens is that as you get older, you tend to feel like you're always being judged. And this comes along with that kind of environment in that kind of household anyway, right? So if you had a creative parent or a parent who shamed you for being creative, and that slip of the tongue, I think, when I said creative parent, was not a coincidence, because as I said, sometimes it is the parent themselves who is also creative and shut down their own creative efforts when they were young because they experienced the same cycle, maybe with your grandparent, or another ancestor who said, don't do that, that's dangerous, you're not going to make money, you're not going to be good at it, right? So a lot of times, yeah, you do have a creative parent who also is perpetuating this cycle of shame and this cycle of attacking someone for their creative efforts. But what happens when you have that kind of household is you're usually judged on a lot of other things too. It's not just your creative efforts. It's, the way you talk, the way you dress, the way you fit into the family, your grades, the way you perform at school, right? Like, you're supposed to fulfill a certain identity that will make the parents proud. You're supposed to fulfill a certain role. Usually that helps meet everyone else's needs if you are the child who's been cast in that people-pleasing role. And so you're always being judged. And the child knows that. The INFJ or the INFP child knows that they are always being watched and they are always being judged. And then they carry that with them into adulthood. So, any short story I try to write, or any painting I try to paint, or anything I try to do creatively, knitting a scarf, like anything, it's going to be mercilessly judged by sort of the faceless masses, right? I mean, maybe, yeah, mom or dad, but there's also this kind of dysfunctional fantasy of, I'm going to put this creative piece of work out there and the whole world is going to jump on it. And they're either going to hate it and they're going to criticize it, I'm going to be bullied, or they're not going to notice it at all. No one's even going to notice that I did anything because it's going to be so unimportant. It's not even going to catch anybody's eye, right? So that feeling of pursuing a creative life is inviting attack. That persists for a long time. And it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond. We can really carry that over decades into our adult life. That if I put myself out there and I try to create something, I'm really going to be inviting attack. And so I can't do that. That's not allowed. So how do we start to heal this pattern of, I can't put myself out there, I have to protect myself, I have to use my people-pleasing skills to not be creative so they don't threaten anyone else? The first step is that we want to build inner resilience. This is key. We need to build inner resilience, which means taking the focus off the judgments of others, or the perceived judgments of others, the expectations of others, the perceived expectations of others. I say that because a lot of times there are really judgments and expectations coming from other people, but often the judgments and expectations that we think are coming from other people are not, and we're just perceiving that in our own mind because of our own past history. So it can be either or, and it can be both. It can kind of be a mixed bag, but we really want to work with letting go of the judgments and expectations of others, and we want to build that inner resilience, because if we don't build that inner resilience, when we do start pursuing our creative life and we do start making and creating things and putting them out there, stepping into the spotlight, if you will, and I just finished a class where we went really deep on this subject, stepping into the spotlight. If you step into the spotlight and you haven't built that inner resilience, you're not going to be able to withstand the projections of others. And that's where the fear comes in, because anytime you put yourself out there in the world, whether you write an article or you write a book or you knit a scarf and you sell it on Etsy, whatever it is, you make something creative and you put it out in the world, other people are going to put their projections on it, both negative and positive. And it's really important that you have the inner resilience to withstand both. The negative projections are going to say, this is ugly, I didn't like it, I'm going to leave a negative review, whatever it is. And then the positive projections are going to go in the opposite direction. Right? This is the best thing I've ever seen, this is the best scarf I've ever bought, this is the best book I've ever read, which feels good at the time. That kind of praise can really feel good when we get that 5-star review on our book, or somebody loves the thing that we sold on Etsy. However, if you haven't built that inner resilience, even with the positive projections, there's going to be a dark side to it where you're like, ooh, like now they're expecting something from me. Now I received praise and the bar is set up here And I'm feeling really uncomfortable because I feel like I have to live up to that. And I feel like I have to live up to it every time, right? So we want to build that inner resilience so we can not only detach from the negative projections of others, but we can also detach from our need to people please and live up to the positive projections of others. So we can detach from both negative and positive projections, and we can stay in our own lane and keep doing our own thing and living our own creative life. I'm going to be talking about this and so much more. This topic, there is so much to talk about. Creativity and creative alchemy, which is the name of my new class starting February 28th. I chose creative alchemy because this is not just a class on creativity, although there will be lots of stuff in it about creativity and intuition and building your creative life and following your creative intuition. But this is really a class about how you change, how you transform as a person through your creative process, and how your creative process is a key part of your growth and evolution as a soul on this planet. The two are intertwined. And I always have taught this from day one when I was teaching people and coaching people, writing books on creativity and writing. Your creative life is not separate from the rest of your regular life. It is all intertwined, and the two do affect each other. So creative alchemy is really about bringing what's inside of you, all of it, your lightness and your darkness, your past and your history and your trauma, and also your hopes and your dreams and your bright, shining future potential. Bringing all of that out of you and creating something that can be shared with other people on the planet, whether that's through a teaching or that's through a work of art or that's through an experiment or a lifestyle or whatever form your creativity takes. It doesn't necessarily have to be something within the category of fine arts. There's a lot of different things that can be considered creative and creativity. So that's what this new class is really all about, creative alchemy. Like I said, we're going to start February 28th. This is a 3-week class. As always, all of my classes are recorded. So if you can't make it live, that's completely fine. You can catch the recordings. I'm always available by email during my classes, so you can always email me if you really need some catch-up or you have questions that didn't get addressed during the class. So please don't shy away from this. If you're in a time zone that doesn't work out or you have a work schedule and you just don't think you're going to be able to make it, because you can get the recordings and get just as many of the benefits. Please also sign up for my newsletter. That's where I will be sending out all the updates and the notifications about the class, including when registration opens, how many days you have left, and when it closes. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into this video today. The last video in this series is INFJ, unhappiness in life, how that is also linked to creativity in your creative life, and why it's so important to really look at that issue closely if you're serious about having a happier life. All right, everyone, I hope I see you for this new class, and I will see you next time.